All emotions aside, it's unlikely the Jaguars turn their season around and make the playoffs. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. I'll tell you how they can do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. It's your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen here, wherever you listen to your podcast, or if you're watching on our YouTube page, we thank you very much for doing that. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. That's right. Download the Game Time app. Make sure you enter the promo code Locked On NFL. And once you do that, guess what? You'll get $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us every single day. And we appreciate that. I'm going to tell you why you join us right here. I'm going to get right to it. No more speeches in third segment. No more rah-rah. It's time to get it done. Oh, those are the words from Doug Peterson, and I know you guys feel the exact same way. Foye Oluokun is going to be gone for a while with plantar fasciitis. Ouch, I've had that before. It does not feel real well. Probably not going to be on IR. It's likely that he'll be here, be back before that. So that's a good sign, but they're going to have to figure that out. We'll go over that in segment 2. Finally, at the top of the show, which is right now, hard work just got harder, got more difficult. So I want to preface this by saying there's 2 ways that I can approach or that we can approach the rest of the season. The Jaguars are 0-3. They've scored 40 points in 3 games. They haven't given you a whole bunch of stuff to be real optimistic about. They definitely haven't made you feel good over the last 3 weeks. You didn't feel too bad after week 1, even though today Doug Peterson kind of hinted that game is a little bit more hard to swallow than the Buffalo game, because Buffalo game just was an anomaly. It's like, that's one of those on the Cincinnati games. Remember Bill Belichick said that? And I don't know if I need to be mentioning his name right now on this show with all the discourse going on about maybe what might happen in the future, but let's stay on track. I don't know if I agree with Doug Peterson that it's a harder pill to swallow. I think getting mollywopped on national television is about as bad as it gets, right? But there are 2 ways you can look at it. We can talk about the things that they have done and the things that they haven't done in the first 3 weeks, or we can try to focus on the things that they have to do and must do in order for their season to get turned around. And today, I'm going to put my feelings to the side. I'm going to get out my feelings. And that's what we're going to talk about, because whether you like it or not, Shad Khan did not fire Doug Peterson. He did not fire Trent Baalke yet. But as long as they're still standing there, they have an opportunity and a chance to turn this thing around, however daunting that task seems. You know, the presser I just saw, Doug Peterson mentioned that when someone was asking him about Tom Coughlin, who's going in the Ring of Honor next week at the Colts game when they have the retro jerseys on. One of the things that he may have learned from him, or as Tom sort of, reached out for any advice. And he said in the past, maybe not this week, but in the past, he sent a picture of a sunset. He emailed him a picture of a sunset saying the sun came up today. And that is what makes me want to do this show the way I'm doing it today, to tell everybody, as long as they can, they have a job to do. As long as the key and the key fob still works to get into the stadium and nobody's fired them, they have a job to do and they're going to do it. And that's the approach that they have to make. And in the past, you learn from past experiences. They've done this before. Doug Peterson gave examples of when he did it before in Philadelphia, when they were 1-5, and then they went and made a run when he was in Kansas City. Obviously, they were 2-7 here, and they turned it around and made it all the way to the playoffs. So there's what do they call it in court? There's precedence, and there's a reason to not necessarily be optimistic, but to have hope, at least from the coaching perspective, things that he can share with his players. Why and how they, need to get it back on track, and whether or not they can absolutely do that. That's different from whether or not we all think it's going to happen. So it's possible, but is it probable? Lots of folks may say, I don't think so. I don't think it's likely to happen. I don't think it's probable. And here's why. They have a point of contact problem on the offensive line. They don't push people. They don't bully people. They're not big. They're not physical. That man that's not coaching, that's considered the greatest coach of all time, kind of sits on his podcast that they don't have a whole bunch of big pieces, all big people to move people around. And I'll paraphrase that because it's secondhand knowledge where I got that from. But I trust the fact that Bill Belichick did say that they're not people movers up front. And I don't know how you fix that problem. You can't fix it during the middle of the season. The same thing I said about the offensive line last year. And they made the mistake of thinking that all they had to do was be healthy, and that's not true. Um, they have that issue that they're going to have to learn how to play around. Now, in the last couple of seasons, they figured that out. They won 9 games and could have possibly won even more games had the ball bounced a couple of ways with field goals and a little bit of health issues and all of that stuff. So they know what it's like. Unfortunately, they know what it's like over the last 3 years to have to play around the lack of physicality on the offensive line. And I'd really, really like to, every time you ask Doug about them, he goes, they did a nice job. They're doing a nice job. I don't know if he's saying that for players to hear it and to be encouraged, but and probably if you look at it analytically and break down the all 22 and take PFF grades, guys aren't playing as bad as it looks. It's just that they're not all playing great at the same time. And usually based on the game and the situation and the scenarios, that's a recipe for disaster because all it takes is for one of those guys to not play well. So when Doug Peterson talks about it being an us issue and it's internal and to really, really focus on who you are. And he says it's about execution, which, kind of leads you thinking that what he's really doing is taking the culpability part of it off of coaching. But then in the next sentence, he says, and it's on us too for the positions that we put them in. Look, it's not rocket science. It sounds like guys are playing the absolute best that they can possibly play based on their potential and ability, and that's what they have, and they know it. And they have to figure out how to navigate around that and put guys in position because they've done it in the past for those players to be adequate. And it just sounds like to me that they're fighting now just to get back to the respectability of maybe being a 9-8 team as opposed to elevating beyond that, because these players have not shown you that they can play at an elite level when they need to be able to get beyond just winning 9 games. And I think the conundrum for everybody is trying to figure out where exactly they are and what are our expectations. When you're 0-3, your expectations have now changed to you just want to be as good as you were, as decent as you were last year. Coming into this season, that wasn't the goal for anybody. And I don't think anybody would deny that. So we're going to talk about how hard work just got harder. The NFL is very, very difficult. And I'll remind people of that at the top of segment 2, why I feel that way. But as he said, as Doug Peterson said, it's not going to get any easier and nobody going to feel sorry for you. So we'll talk about that at the top of segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel, man. We have talked about FanDuel over and over again, and that's because I love talking about winners, right? Winners as in people that play FanDuel, and the fact that FanDuel itself is America's #1 sports book. I said #1, not #2. They are the #1 sports book in America. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. I'll tell you how. When you get a hunch, like right smack in the middle of the game, when you get a hunch right in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. No more jumping around, no more trying to find out what's going on. And by looking at something else, you can stay right there on FanDuel on the same page where your bets are and find out exactly why you're winning and what has to happen for you to win. All right, get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Guaranteed means whether you win or lose, you're still going to get the $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. Place your first $5 bet. You're going to get $200 in bonus bets on FanDuel. So make sure you visit the number one sports book in America. That is FanDuel at FanDuel.com. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Foye Oluokun, we'll just mention it, the tackling machine who's playing well yet again for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He signed a contract extension in the offseason, and we were all happy about that. Not happy about the fact that he's dealing with plantar fasciitis and will be missing for several weeks. Not to the point where they believe it's an IR issue. That'll put him out for a longer period of time, but I think they're hoping maybe 3 weeks, and then they'll evaluate him and see where he is. And obviously, it's going to be a big test for them to make sure that they can get that kind of production, because he has been as about as productive as maybe 5 or 6 off-ball linebackers in the National Football League since he has been a Jaguar, and even a couple of years before that. So kudos to him. Hopefully, he has a speedy recovery, and now it's just time for next man up, right? It's time for next man up. That would be number 51, linebacker out of Florida. That's right. It'll be his time to step up and show exactly what it is he can do. I have been raving about Ventrell Miller ever since he got whatever injury bug he got out of his system when he was at Florida. He probably worked on his body, changed his body. I told y'all about his progress. And now you're going to see it. You're going to see him, even though he's out there playing with a whole cast on his left hand. We'll see if he can, along with Devin Lloyd and Chad Moore, provide the Jaguars with exactly what they need to make up for in the next man up. The next man up mantra really counts right now for him and the linebacker core. You know, that defense is really, really reeling with injuries on that back seven. They are. And Doug Peterson talked about the rotation. They call it the hockey rotation, I guess. And now it's not going to be about too much guesswork. You're going to know who the guys are. You're out there and you got to play. This is now critical for them to get teams off the field on third down and not let drives be extended, because the Jaguars have not really done well with time of possession. The other night, Baltimore, it just seems like Cleveland did it first. Cleveland was destroying the Jaguars, and the Jaguars had like 3 possessions in the first half. And that includes getting the ball first. And that was a recipe for disaster, because then Cleveland also got the ball at the beginning of the second half. And that affected that game because you get less and less opportunity. Reduced possessions means that what you have to do is just be more efficient when you do have the ball, and you got to protect it. And the Jaguars haven't been able to stay on the field. They've started the game out a lot, getting a lot of 3 and outs. Doug Peterson was asked about that today, and he said, yeah, man, you really, really want to go out there and start the game with a score. At the very least, you want to start the game with a long drive that keeps the other defense on the field, and maybe you end up with some points. Touchdowns are nice, but we'll take field goals as well, because those are positive things. It affects the ebb and the flow of the game a lot, and the Jaguars just haven't had much ebb and much flow. When trying to find out what's wrong with the team, it's almost as if the old analogy that I used about pipe bust in the bathroom and you fix that, and then one bust in the kitchen and you fix that one, and then all of a sudden the pipe you didn't even know start busting out of your bedroom ceiling, and now you're leaking water and you can't sleep. It's like whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Even when we fix something else, it's almost as if we can't fix everything at one time. And it just seems like the guys are either pressing or they don't trust each other. Whatever it is, and I did a show yesterday saying that the message isn't being resonated. Well, it's not. You either are good enough to get it done, you're not good enough to get it done, or you're having a hard time figuring out how to get it done during the game when everything's flying for real, as opposed to what you're supposed to do, and then the next day you can look at the film. They always say they're going to look at the tape. They don't have to look at the tape to tell you what they did wrong. They know exactly what maybe the coach does, but the player doesn't. The player doesn't have to correct anything. What do you mean you're going to correct it? You knew what you were supposed to do before you went out there. You've been practicing all of this time. So how come the repetition isn't working? How come the messages isn't getting through? Is it the messenger? Has the message been delivered strong enough by this brass? Because now you're starting to see a little bit of a change where there's no more rah-rah speeches. And we'll talk about that in segment 3. But the message is now like, no, you got to get it and you got to go out and play. And you just got to go be yourself. Because eventually what's going to happen is people are going to look at this team and say, that's who you are. When you're 0-3, you're an 0-3 football team. That is exactly who you are. And if they go up here to Houston and they go 0-4, they're going to be an 0-4 football team. And you can go back on each occasion and look at each individual game, and you'll see some of the same problems in each and every game. And you hear some of the same reasons for those problems each and every week. And that is guys just aren't doing their job. And it's just about execution. And you have to wonder a little bit with all of the rotation. And I know the reason for the rotation on defense is to keep guys fresh in the fourth quarter so they won't falter. But at some point, are you doing yourself a detriment with all of that rotating and not allowing guys to at least get greased up before you start rotating? And when you look at the time of possession for the Jaguars, offensively, you can say, well, it ain't about rotating. It's just about guys doing what they're supposed to do, all 1 through 11, from the quarterback all the way down to whoever you think is the 11th guy on the team. But defensively, I can understand that. If the offense doesn't possess the ball a lot and teams are beating the Jaguars in time of possession, then you can't wait till people get tired to give them a blow, because there is something called the end of the game. The end of the game, there's two things chasing you. The fact that, you're playing the game, but then the end of the game is coming up behind you. So the thing is you can't wait. It's like waiting. It's like going to Texas on I-10. You get through Texas and you're on your way to El Paso and you got a half a tank of gas. If you ever heard about that stretch of road out there, you're going to get yourself in a world of hurt. You better fill that tank up before that last gas station, before you're on your way to El Paso, because you'll run out of gas before you hit another gas station. And I think the fear of the Jaguars running out of gas at a time when they need their best players on the field is what makes them rotate guys early. Doesn't do you much good, though. Like the other night, they were down 34 to 3 at halftime. That rotating didn't do anything. The guys that were in there weren't playing well. The offense has to give this defense a chance. You have to give the defense a chance. It seems like to me the other day, the defense is like, oh, hell, man, they ain't going to do nothing, so we ain't going to do nothing. And I know they probably didn't say or think that, but when you watch the game, that's kind of what you get the feeling of, like, this thing takes on a life of its own. How can the Jaguars grab it and have more control over the outcome? Like, how can they dictate what will happen in the game, as opposed to just standing there and just like a napkin in a windstorm, wherever we end up, that's where we end up, and we're going to fight our way out of it. No, you can control whether or not the game gets out of hand. How do you do that? Well, we'll talk about it and maybe tell you what doesn't work. We'll do that in just a second here in segment number 3 on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is therapy. That's exactly what it is. And if you're considering therapy, there's no place I'd rather recommend than BetterHelp. It has been helpful to me, no pun intended, and it could be the same for you. Death in the family, time management, trying to work and also spend time with your loved ones. I got a nice little grandchild I try to spend as much time with, and the guilt that comes along with not being able to be everywhere all the time at the same time, along with issues of pain management that contribute to those things as well. Those are all things that I had to deal with, and I dealt with them on BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. a lot to really grasp when you're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. The first couple of days, man, we just had to let that steam go. Disgusted, disappointed, and this is one of the things that happens when you're always being real defensive and you have this baggage coming into this game. We complained for years that the Jaguars didn't have a whole bunch of primetime games. We complained that people who really talk about the Jaguars on a national level don't really know what's going on with the team. We said that Trevor Lawrence wasn't as bad as they thought. He was absolutely better than what they thought. And then you get a chance on Monday night in front of the whole world, and you stand up there with your arms folded, with your chest out, and your feet spread apart, like we're about to show you. And then everything that you thought you were going to show the national audience, they showed you as to why they were right. Now, for now, we just got to eat the fact that those things that national people have said about the Jacksonville Jaguars are true, because they were true when it counted. They were true the other night, right? Even if we still believe that they're better than that, it's something that they have to show on the field. And us talking about it isn't going to change it. And them talking about it at a podium isn't going to change it. Them having all the players only meetings they want to isn't going to change it. And Doug Peterson saying we need to hold ourselves accountable and maybe we can coach better. And everybody giving the proverbial, my bad, it's on me. I got to look in the mirror first. It starts with me. And we're taking turns making bad plays. And right now we suck. And telling us the obvious rhetorical stuff that we already know about the team. Well, that's fine for a while. But at this point, it's kind of played out, right? So what you really want this team to do is to actually be exactly who they think they are. And I use the word think because it's not etched in stone that whoever they think they are, whoever they are trying to be, it's not etched in stone that they're actually capable of doing it. And it could be just some little small things that prevents them from doing it. But small things are a lot. You look at good football teams and you try to sit them side by side with Jacksonville and see who has if they have like-minded characteristics or if they have common things about them. The problem is some people think comparison is the thief of joy. Not in a league that is all about comparison. Because I tell you what happens. You get a home team and you get a visiting team and they compete. It is imperative that, and it is for you to think that comparison doesn't have anything to do with it when the competition in a gladiator sport where they're competing against each other and comparing strength, it's almost as if like you're watching two dudes sit there and arm wrestle and you say comparison is the thief of joy. How? When they're sitting there side by side trying to beat each other's brains in and they're competing with each other. No, comparison will tell you the absolute truth, because the Jaguars can't go to the playoffs, to the championship games, to the Super Bowl, or stand up on a podium and hold a trophy after it's all said and done without, guess what? Comparing themselves to and actually competing against and beating an opponent every single week and every step along the way. So this is just all about, it's not what you're saying. It's not how you feel about yourself. It's not about who you think you want to be. It's not about any of that. It is about this. And this is how I believe if they take this approach, along with the fact that they have done this before, they know how to work around a bad offensive line, right? They understand that. There's a lot of self-evaluation that has to happen. They know the only way this changes is to do it on the field. Demonstrated performance, consistent demonstrated performance is the only thing that's going to change this. Now, if they win this week, does it all go away? No, because all it tells you is that the Jacksonville Jaguars can beat a team that we all thought was pretty good. I kind of think that you saw that in week one. They were real close from going up 24-7 against the Miami Dolphins, who people believe were a good team at that time before Tua Tagovailoa got injured. But that game and those moments right there at the end of the third quarter encapsulates exactly what I'm talking about. All that good was taken away by that play. And then that play makes you think of earlier on a drop pass by Christian Kirk on third down. Those things seem small when you have a lot of time left in the game. They seem and loom large Remember that thing I said about time kind of running up behind you? At the end of the game, those mistakes are bigger and broader because you have less time to overcome them, right? So when it all comes down to it, no matter how good they look on certain plays, no matter how good they look for certain periods, and if they're not doing it at the right time, which is at the end of a game that is still within reach, it doesn't matter. The Jaguars have to have a sense of timing, and they just don't have that right now. The only way to get it is to just do and play good all the time. Next play. Next play. And don't tell me anything about injuries on the defense because the Rams are probably the most banged up team in the league, and they beat the 49ers this weekend. They have to find a way, and it's going to be play by play. Now, the coaches can help because you have to know who you are and who you're not. Sometimes you're going to run the ball even when you know you ain't going to make it, but you're running it to keep the linebackers and to keep people honest and forcing them. Like, just because you know that they're good in these areas, no, you got to be that. I'm not going to just concede that, we can't do anything. I'm going to make you show me that today, when you woke up, you're as good as you think you are in those spots. They have to, though, put the team in a position to make plays. They have to put the team in a position. And I love Doug, the fact that he holds his timeouts. We've seen a couple of examples where holding those timeouts till the end of the game really, really helps them. You don't have to do it in the first half. At some point, call a timeout, not when the time clock's running out, not when you want to review something. In the first half, pull them together, man, and regroup them. I don't care if it's offense or defense. When you see it going bad, those three that you have in the first half do not carry over. Use all of them if you have to. As little, hey, let's get our breath now. We're okay. All right. Now, I know you can do that on the sideline too, but sometimes during the middle of the game, it's necessary for you to do that, especially when teams start getting into a little bit of a rhythm. You break their rhythm. Use those timeouts early in the game. Don't take anything for granted, because when it gets to the end of the game, it's going to be more and more difficult for you to control the outcome, because now time is not necessarily on your side. Time is always on your side. When you listen to Locked On Jaguars, you make it your first listen. You can make Locked On NFL your second listen. It's the new Locked On NFL show with the double dose of NFL talk coming your way every single day, early in the morning. A double shot of espresso coming from the madman Tyler Rowland, along with local experts from around our league that know the teams better than anybody, and then slide in the middle of the day to the barbershop with me for a little laid-back approach to how we talk about football. It's two shows, same thing. Locked On NFL in the morning, and in the afternoon, make sure you check it out on our YouTube page or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, we'll do the crossover tomorrow with those fools from Houston. I got to hear their mouth on their 2-1 start. I wish Houston would have won, so I would have just had to take that beating on the crossover. But now that they lost, they're a little bit angry, and they're probably going to not – the guys are probably not going to have too much – they ain't going to be too puffed up about this crossover. So good thing I don't have to talk about the Jaguars the whole time. They got to spend half the time explaining why they lost the game the other day as well. Make sure you check that out tomorrow. Also here in Jacksonville, of course, you know the routine, tropical storm or hurricane, something looks like it's on the way. Make sure you get your provisions. Tighten up on your family. Make sure you know where everyone is in case water gets cut off, in case power goes out. You guys make sure you check in here every single day, because it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. Please take care of each other, and we'll see you.